Project management, what exactly is it? You might have heard a lot of definitions regarding project management from different sources, but I'm going to give you a very simple definition. Project management is applying knowledge and skills, tools and techniques to a project to derive the end goal and the benefits and value of achieving that goal. Very simple example would be you're developing software. The software gets developed and then it gets put into production. The project is not just to deliver the software, the project is to realize the value and the benefits of that software application. So, project management is multifold. And today, I'm going to show you a wide spectrum of definitions so that you go away truly understanding what project management is. I call this smart project management. In order to be successful in our projects, we need to be smart in our project management. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound project management. Let's jump straight into our discussion today. Project management is many things to different people. And there's a misnomer that project management is new. Project management is not new. It has been around for several years. In this journey, I will be taking you through the trajectory of project management from 2500 BC up to where we are today and giving you some solid definitions. The training is brought to you on behalf of Praizion Project Management Trainers at praizion.com. What exactly is a project? We can say that a project is a temporary endeavor that is undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Projects start and end, unlike operational work, which continues throughout the life of an organization. But why are projects authorized? The reasons for authorizing a project are diverse. Projects could be authorized because of market demand, organizational need, customer request, technological advance, legal requirement, and even social need. When you think about projects you're managing, take a step back and ask the question, why am I managing this? What is the value that the customer seeks to derive from this? How can I make this a win for the customer? How can I make this a win for my organization? These are worthwhile questions that every project manager should ask. Again, what is project management? To make it a bit more specific, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to produce a specific deliverable. Now, when we talk about a specific deliverable, you could say that is just one step. To make it a win, to make the project a success, we need to actively pursue the benefits that the project is meant to bring. Let me give you an example. Think about a cake baking project, a project to bake a cake. The project needs the application of knowledge and skills, tools and techniques. Knowledge, what you know. Think about it. There are different pieces of knowledge that you can apply to any endeavor to make it a success. Time management is definitely one. The ability to understand what needs to be done, scoping out the project, the ability to effectively cost the project, the ability to effectively manage stakeholders, the ability to effectively manage the resources. These are all skills that you can apply to a project. When we talk about the knowledge is what you know. The skills is applying what you know. Some people have a lot of knowledge, but they're not able to apply it. Talk about the skills, we're talking about applying that knowledge. The tools are things like software tools, manual tools, and techniques are methods and approaches. There are many approaches in the world of project management. For example, earned value is a technique. The ability to carry out a QA, quality assurance, a QC, those could be looked at as techniques that you use in the world of project management. So applying all of these to a project is what project management is. Now, when you go a step further and you think about the deliverable, that is just one piece. It is not the end. When you deliver the cake, what comes next? We want to ensure that the customer realizes benefits, and those benefits, multiple benefits, when we stack up those benefits, we use the term value, because value is the net benefit that the customer realizes from a product, a service, or some other result. So in this case, the benefit could be happiness, delight at the cake, the ability to celebrate a birthday with a cake. It could be that this customer loves delicious cakes. Her taste buds come alive when she eats cake. That is a benefit. Whatever the benefits are, when we sum up the benefits, we use the term value. When the customer is deriving value from what you delivered as expected, we talk about the outcome being what the customer sought out to get in the beginning. So, project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to a project to deliver a deliverable product, service, or result to obtain the benefits and the ultimate value to achieve that outcome. Happy customer, thumbs up, satisfied, satiated. Project management, again, can be described like this. This is my definition of project management, and it's a multifold definition. I say it's leading a team of people to achieve a desired outcome of goals through servant leadership. It's leading a team to incremental success through excellent communication and interpersonal skills. You can also say it's applying skills, tools, and techniques to organize, execute, and manage project work and assignments. It's making proactive changes to manage complexity and ambiguity. Project management is also about reporting on project status, project progress, risks, issues, key decisions, and it's also about delivering incremental value using hybrid methods and approaches. In other words, you're combining agile approaches and predictive approaches to give a hybridized project management approach. You can also say project management is a discipline of working with a team to deliver value to customers through collaboration, leadership, and execution of related project tasks, enabling team task accountability, autonomy, and servant leadership. And you can say it involves working on delivering value. You see that word value again. It's so important because now the PMI have changed their definition in the sixth edition to upgrade it to include benefits value mindedness. So you could say it involves working on delivering value in different ways through a unique deliverable, product, service, result, product increment, and what have you. Taking a look at the PMI's PMBOK Guide 7th edition, it says the application of knowledge. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. Project management refers to guiding the project work to deliver the intended outcomes. Project teams can achieve the outcomes using a broad range of approaches: predictive, hybrid, and adaptive. It's very important that you understand the work of the project manager is different from that of the functional manager and the operations manager. The project manager is responsible for leading and managing the affairs of the team to achieve the project objectives. Now, when you look at the work of a functional head, it's oversight for a business unit. The work of the operations manager, it's responsible for ensuring that business operations are efficient. So there's a difference in the roles and responsibilities of the PM. Now, talking about how long project management has been on the scene, project management has been around for a long time. Take a look at the timeline: 2560 BC, the pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, 206 BC. Fast forward to the 1900s, Frederick Taylor and Henry L. Gantt, both responsible in some way for the WBS and, of course, the Gantt chart, which is named after Henry L. Gantt. Earned value coming on the scene in the 1950s, late 50s. IPMA, a project management organization, being founded, and then PMI, the Project Management Institute, in 1969. The first PMP exam, 1984, Prince 2, 1989. The idea about lean being more evangelized in the general business landscape. It had been around since the 50s in some way, but now it's reborn in different ways, right? And then Scrum in the 1990s, early 90s, formalized mid 90s, the Agile Manifesto in 2001. And fast forward to where we are today, around 2024, we have the idea and the understanding of hybridization. Hybridization is important. So when you take a look at this timeline, you can see that project management did not start today. Project management had been around from the very beginning. Take a look at 2500 BC. Wow. That means project management had been around. People were applying resources to projects and they were getting stuff done. Another equally compelling example of project management can be seen when we behold the Great Wall of China. Great Wall of China, 206 BC. Another great example. Now, when you take a look at all of these awesome builds from the distant past, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Statue of Zeus, and so on and so forth, what you can realize from these awesome works of art and engineering is that they all had project management elements in common: managing resources, maintaining a schedule, and coordinating different groups. Project management has not changed from that. Resources, schedules, budgets, working with people, coordinating people, getting people organized. The Great Wall of China wouldn't have been built without people working together as a united front. So, project management is many things, many ingredients, but I'm going to help distill it for you today so that when you think about project management, you will have a compass to guide you to the true north of project management. But there's one thing I want to let you in on regarding project management. Project management is not great because of software tools. It is made great because of the great minds and the attitudes behind the tools. And that means it's not about the Jiras of this world or the DevOps people using Azure DevOps, right? It's not about using the tool. It's not about using Microsoft Project or Smartsheets or the Monday.coms or the P6s of this world. Those are all good, but that is not what makes project management great. It's the ability to work together. Take a look at these awesome works of art and engineering. They didn't have Microsoft Project back then. They didn't have Jira or Confluence or version 1 or Rally. But what they had was grit, determination, and a method to their own reality of the project. It's not about tools, my friends. These builds are examples. Now, while project management did evolve with Henry L. Gantt's contribution of the Gantt chart, the milestone chart, and the progression, as I showed you, from way back to now, it's important to realize what makes project management great. Enter the Project Management Institute in 1969. These five awesome people started the idea off on a napkin in Pennsylvania, but it has developed in leaps and bounds, and the PMI has been instrumental in giving us standards like the PMBOK Guide. And the PMBOK Guide is the framework that I'm going to talk about today. The PMBOK Guide and the PMI normally come up in topics such as the PMP exam, an exam for project managers, which is from the PMI. But the PMP exam was not as mammoth back in 1980s. If you take a close look on the screen, you can see that in 1984 there were 40 PMPs. Fast forward to 2005, when I got certified, there are about 200 plus thousand. And then fast forward even more to today, 2024, there's fast approaching 1.5 million PMPs. The number might be even bigger than what I'm showing here. But this is a signal that project management has evolved. You see, way back, the PMI made a prediction in 1993. They said project management will become recognized as an individual discipline. Progress towards further acceptance will come from both practitioner and academic circles. Project manager certifications, such as by PMI, will increase in importance. Additional emphasis is expected by educational institutions. You got to remember that way back in the 90s, there was no project management degrees, bachelor's, master's, MBA focus, none of that in project management. But it has become a reality. Finally, project management may further become a career track in larger corporations. It was a prediction and it is true. And you know what? The senior executives know. A survey showed that 90% of senior executives ranked project management methods as either critical or somewhat important to their ability to deliver successful projects and remain competitive. So, project management is here to stay. Now you've got a definition of project management and you understand context. Let's talk about the PMBOK Guide. The PMBOK Guide is an accepted good project management practice collection. And there are different editions of the PMBOK Guide. Right now, they're on the 7th edition, but the 6th edition is still very relevant. And a lot of what I'm going to teach you today is from the 6th edition. The cool thing is it gives you a common lexicon, a common understanding of project management. So let's dive straight in to what I call the process group pentagon. I'm going to show you how you can group what you do as a project manager. This is not necessarily strictly sequential. This could be done out of order with overlaps. But the key thing is, before you embark on anything, you want to make sure that it is initiated. So the initiating process group is number one. Initiating means you're authorizing the project. And process groups, such as initiating, are just groups of things we do to move the project along sensibly in a cohesive whole, intentionally and deliberately. So, initiating is all about authorization. It's all about understanding the stakeholders who are involved in the project. Number two is planning. In the planning process group, you plan scope and schedule and costs, quality and resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder. You're planning everything that you need to succeed. It's very straightforward. You know the saying, if you fail to plan, what happens? You're planning to fail. So here we got to plan. And we got to plan with intentionality. On some projects, planning is going to be very iterative. You're going to have changes to your plans, and that's okay. But that's the planning process group. The next process group is the executing process group. And the executing process group is where you take your plan and you put it into action, and the team executes on that work. The team is working the plan. And they're working the plan. And guess what? As you're working the plan, the next process group kicks in, because this is where you are monitoring and controlling the work. You're monitoring how things are proceeding. But if you need to take action to bring something back into alignment, corrective action, you do that. You're also proactive in looking ahead and seeing, oh, we need to prevent this. So you can make a preemptive strike to prevent things going awry. Call it preventive action. And you might be involved in catching defects, which means there has to be defect repair going back to execute it. So monitoring and controlling and executing, they're best buddies, lots of feedback loops, and also feedback loops back to planning, where you may need to replan, you may need to re-baseline. And when you re-baseline, it means that you've made an adjustment that was approved by management or a change board to schedule, cost, scope, or something else. Last but not least, we have the closing process group. And the closing process group is where you're closing out either a phase in a project or the project as a whole. And when you close a phase, you transition into the next phase, but there's a phase end review, a phase gate. We also call it a kill point. And a kill point is called a kill point because that's where you may kill the project. In fact, there's a board of individuals in project management called the murder board and they're meant to catch what is ugly, those ugly projects that could end up killing the firm. You want to catch those projects and kill them before they kill you, the company. So we call that the murder board. And this happens as we move from phase to phase. So when you take a look at these 5 process groups, don't just think the entire project. No, you could apply this to a phase. You could initiate the phase, plan the phase, execute the phase, monitor and control the phase, and close it. And you move to the next phase and you do the same thing. You could also look at this more holistically at the project level. You initiate the project, you plan the project, but you can begin planning the project as you're finishing the initiating, or you could still be identifying your stakeholders, and there's no harm in beginning planning. Watch this. When you send out a proposal to a client, technically you have already started planning because you're looking at costs and schedule and parameters. So in the planning process group, you actually sometimes have a head start. You're not starting afresh. When you get into detailed planning, you might already have some mid-level or high-level planning that you've done. But these 5 process groups, they help define what happens in project management. And if you can think about it in this macro level, then the next set of information will make even more sense. So now that you've got a fairly good idea of the 5 process groups, let's put a little bit of meat on the bone by looking at what I call the 10 areas of project management concern, also known as knowledge areas. These areas are concerning to us because as project managers, we need to ensure these are smooth, efficient, and happening with intentionality. So, in our definition of project management, we're good, but we can add more meat on the bone regarding the knowledge and the skills. We call these knowledge areas. And the very first knowledge area, as you can see, is integration. Now, I've scattered them across the Pentagon randomly. They're not in any grouping per se, they're all across. You've got some things that happen within integration, in initiating, some in planning, some in executing. So the position doesn't really mean anything. It's really just to make it a holistic image. Now, let's break this down a little bit further. The integration area of knowledge is one that focuses on moving the project along in a cohesive whole by effectively coordinating, unifying, and combining. Unifying meaning we're unifying the different parts of project management. We're ensuring that what happens in scope reflects in schedule, reflects in costs, reflects in resources, and you're moving the project along in a cohesive whole. That's what integration is like. Think about a juggler. I liken integration to someone who is juggling a set of clubs or objects. And the success of an integrator is how you're able to keep all those items in the air, moving them along in one cohesive whole, coordinating, combining, and unifying all the project parts. This is what integration is about. There's specific things you do in integration. Let's take a look at them real quick. Number one, you develop a project charter that authorizes the project. Number two, you develop a robust, in many instances, or maybe lean, depending on project size and complexity, project management plan. The project management plan guides the project and it helps you when you're directing and managing the project work. You also are involved in managing project knowledge, which is gathering lessons learned, not at the end of the project alone, but all through and sharing them with team members. You're also involved in monitoring and controlling the project at an integrative level to create work performance reports that give stakeholders an idea of what is happening on the project. And then you're also involved in performing integrated change control, managing change, and lastly, you're involved in closing out the project or closing out a phase in the project, as I said previously. And that is the integration management area of knowledge. Make it simple by distilling it down to the core things you do, as I have gone over this with you. Let's talk about the second area of knowledge. Area number two is scope. When I think of scope management, I am thinking of a telescope analogy. In other words, I'm seeing someone looking through a telescope. Why are they looking through a telescope? They're looking through a telescope because they want the project to become clearer. And this is where you are defining the product features, you're defining the project work, you're understanding clearer what the project is about. And therefore, you got to look through that telescope. There are six things you do here. Number one, you plan how are we going to manage scope? This project looks a little bit big. How are we going to get our arms around it? Which documents are we going to create? What kind of meetings are we going to have? How are we going to collect requirements from the customer? These are all valid questions. Number two, you collect the requirements. The requirements collection could be through focus groups, facilitated workshops, questionnaires, and surveys. You can even use prototypes. There are many tools you can use to glean the requirements, but there's also a term called requirements elicitation. You got to elicit the requirements. Number three, you got to define scope. You got to put some boundaries around the project to understand the inclusions and the exclusions. What is not on the project? Number four, you got to create a work breakdown structure. A work breakdown structure is very specific and peculiar to us in project management. It's a hierarchical depiction of the project. And in order to understand what a WBS looks like, it takes seeing a WBS. So let me take you into the world of work breakdown structures. The work breakdown structure was created back in the late 50s by NASA and the DoD in early 60s. And it shows the various elements of a project, how they integrate. It's not the tiny minutia, but it's at a level that is high enough and at the same time low enough to see the deliverable oriented pieces of the project. When we seek to develop a work breakdown structure, we're breaking down the project in a deliverable oriented way. It shows how the necessary work is distributed. As you can see in this example, this is writing a book, Project Management and Introduction. We can break it down by a deliverable oriented hierarchy of writing the textbook, editing the textbook, or publishing the textbook. Another way you could do this is break it down by chapter. But in this regard, we have write the textbook, edit the textbook by chapter, and publish the textbook. Let me show you another example of a WBS. Now, this is called a horizontal work breakdown structure because we have the hierarchy in a horizontal fashion. A vertical work breakdown structure looks different from this. A vertical WBS looks more like this. This is the work breakdown structure for a house. Take a look at level one, right there at the top. It's like a family tree. We've got the house building project, and this is from the Department of Energy. Really great example. Then we have the deliverable oriented breakdowns, concrete, framing, plumbing, electrical, interior, so on and so forth. And then we have another level under each of those. And you see, we have left it at a level that's high enough to understand it and low enough to at least see how the pieces interconnect. But we're not getting lost in onesie, twosie hours of work. Keep it at a high level. Install patio. That's several hours of work. So the idea is not to create a list of tasks. No, these are higher level chunks that show how the project comes together and they are deliverable oriented. Take a look at this level two alone. Deliverable oriented. The concrete, the framing, the plumbing, these are things that could be looked at as deliverables, deliverable oriented. And this is how you need to think when you're creating a work breakdown structure. It's one of the best things ever. A lot of project managers use the WBS, but when you hear the nebulous process, create WBS, it's definitely worth putting a face to the name. So now you know what a WBS looks like. Okay. The next thing is called validate scope in scope management. This is where your customer is checking the deliverable that you have deemed good to go. They take a look at it and they approve it, or they may ask for more changes. We call that validate scope. Control scope is where you are ensuring that nobody is gold plating. In other words, no one is adding extras that are unauthorized to the project. You are ensuring that all changes go through proper change control. Let's move on to the next one, and we're going to get a little bit quicker here. So we go into the world of schedule management. In the world of schedule management, I like using the watch analogy. When you look at the time on your wrist, you have a better understanding of what's at stake. And this is the work of the project manager. The project manager needs to be the clock watcher, not in a bad way, but the person watching the timeline to know when we're out of time. And for this one, I just say project manager is developing the schedule with the team and the timeline, but you're also managing to the timeline. It's not enough to develop a schedule. You got to manage the schedule. You got to write that schedule. So there's 6 things that we do. Number 1, we plan schedule management. We decide which tool are we going to use for scheduling. Number 2, we define the activities. Number 3, we sequence the activities. We put them in logical order of occurrence. So we understand what needs to be done first, what is dependent on what. And then we estimate the durations for the activities. Number 5, we develop the schedule. And number 6, we control the schedule. So the general idea here, my friends, is that you are working with your team to get a better, firmer idea of the project schedule. When you have a firmer idea of the schedule, you're able to effectively manage the timeline and help shepherd the team. Because in a lot of instances, you got to remember the team is working. They don't have the same level of focus that a project manager may have. Some team members do, but not everyone does. So the idea is that you, the PM, you're keeping your eye on the schedule. Let's take a look at a schedule in a very simple tool called Smartsheet. So when you take a look at a schedule, what exactly do you see? You see a list of tasks that's defining the activities. You see the logical order of occurrence of these tasks. We see a predecessor column which links tasks. Some tasks are going to be predecessors, some are going to be successors. And then once we're done with sequencing the activities, we estimate the activity duration, how long will each activity take, and that pretty much forms your schedule. And you can also keep track of your percent complete, the status. We have progress bars showing how far along the schedule is. And this is the job of a project manager in the world of schedule management. And that pretty much gives us a good idea of what exactly is being done in schedule management. 6 things: plan, which tool are we going to use, define the activities, put them in logical order, estimate how long each activity will take. Then you've got your schedule, pretty much. Develop the schedule and don't forget to control it. Actually use the schedule to keep the project on the straight and narrow. Let's move into the next area. The next area is cost management. Cost management is all about estimating the cost, determining the budget, and ensuring that you do not exceed the budget, ensuring that the budget is effectively controlled. The steps involved in cost management are as follows. Number 1, you plan how to effectively manage cost. Number 2, you estimate cost. When we say estimate cost, we're talking about the individual activities or the bigger chunks of work in the WBS. Somehow, you must come up with an estimate for smaller pieces of work and roll that up into a larger final total amount. This is what we call determining the budget. In determining the budget, we use cost aggregation to roll up all the costs into a total amount. And then in control cost, we ensure that we are managing to that budget. You are ensuring that the budget is not being violated. People are following the spending rules. They are practicing good cost accounting, and the project budget is on track. Now, occasionally, the team may be over budget, but it's the work of the project manager to bring the project back into alignment, to look for ways of balancing things out across different pieces of the project. And there may need to be some change control. It's here that we use things such as earned value to ensure effective cost accounting on the project. So when we take a look at cost management, we can say computing the budget, and it's also to do with controlling the cost. The next area is quality management. Quality is many things to many people, but it's fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, and Kaizen. And when I think about the quality area, I like thinking about a rosette that shows quality, such as the one on the screen that shows number one, first. So quality is about defining and managing project and product quality. Three simple things. Number one, identify the quality standards you need to be adhering to. Plan how to meet those standards. Number two, manage the quality. Execute the quality management plan. In other words, assure that quality standards are being met. We call this quality assurance. And number three, quality control. The PMI call it control quality. This is where you are checking the product, ensuring that the product meets the spec. Fitness for use, conformance to requirements, customer satisfaction, and a Kaizen mindedness to always be improving. That's what quality is about. The next knowledge area after quality is resources. Resources refers to human, equipment, materials, supplies, and facilities. Human resources, equipment, resources, materials, supplies, facilities. This is about planning and managing resources, ensuring that if there needs to be a change, you catch the change, you execute the change. There's 6 things. Number one, you plan how we're going to manage resources. Number two, you estimate how much of each resource you need: human, equipment, material, supplies, skill level, skill set, equipment type, grade, and things such as that. Number three, you acquire the resources: human, equipment, material, supplies, facilities. Number four, you develop the team, build the team, get the team to synergize, get the team to sync, team building, getting the team on the same page through training and development. That's what we do here. Number five, manage team. This is really a leadership job. This is where you lead, inspire, motivate, and encourage. Number six, control resources. This is where you ensure that the physical resources are on track, ensuring that you got the resources you asked for, or that were promised, or that a business unit leader told you they would send to you, and you ensure that the resources are being used. This is not about human resources in control resources. This is solely about the physical resources, the materials, the supplies, the equipment, and so on. And that's resource management in a nutshell. The next area is what the project manager spends 70 to 90% of the time doing. Can you guess what that is? It's communications. In the communications area, the project manager needs to do 3 things. Project manager needs to understand the 5 W's of communicating: what, when, where, who, why, and the H, how. This is where you are planning what to communicate, and you are distributing the information and monitoring the communication effectiveness. So 3 simple things. Number 1, you plan communications management. You develop a communications management plan. What are we going to communicate? When are we going to communicate it? Why are we going to communicate it? Who's going to communicate it? Where is this communication taking place? Is it in a meeting? Is it going to be on a hard drive? Is it going to be on a Zoom? And when you've got a plan for communications, then you communicate. We call that managed communications. You distribute information in reports and you are communicating. The third thing and the final one here is monitor communications. We don't use the word control. It's a bit aggressive when we're talking about humans. You don't control their communication, but you monitor how the communications are going and you steer the communications in the right direction. We call that monitor communications. And these are things a project manager should be thinking about and doing. Now, technically speaking, the next area of knowledge is risk, but I'm not going to hit risk just yet because there's a point I want to make about it. So instead, we're going to talk about a different area of knowledge before we get to risk, and it's procurement. What exactly is procurement management? Procurement management has to do with buying something from outside of the project. So we say that procurement management is about planning and managing contracts and agreements. What do you need to purchase from outside the project? It could be services, it could be a sub deliverable. But there are three things again that you do. Number one, you plan, what do we need to buy? Can we make it ourselves or do we really need to buy it from outside? If you determine that you need to buy it, in other words, you carry out a make or buy decision and the decision is to buy, then you move into collating all the information, putting together an RFP, request for proposal, sending it out to a group of selected sellers, maybe pre-approved sellers, and then in the next process, conduct procurement. This is where you actually send out the RFPs and the RFQs, request for quotation. You get the responses. You go through a source selection criteria. You decide who you're going to give the contract to. You sign the agreement, and then you move into managing the contract, which is done in control procurement. You ensure that you are getting what you paid for. And honestly, that's procurement in a nutshell. It's very straightforward. The complexities of procurements are in the contract types and in the pragmatism of keeping the vendor on the same page as you. The next area of knowledge is stakeholder management. And stakeholder management is all about people who can impact the project. We call them stakeholders, or people who the project could affect. So, stakeholder management is about identifying stakeholders while planning, managing, and monitoring the engagement. Let's take a look at the four things that we do in the stakeholder area. Number one, you got to identify them, identify your stakeholders. I often use the low hanging fruit approach where you've got five stakeholders. Ask those five who else should be in this meeting, who else is going to be affected by this project. Then you move into planning how to engage the stakeholders you've identified. So use the existing stakeholders to identify more and then plan how to engage them all. When you have a solid plan for engagement, you carry out the plan by managing stakeholder engagement. This is where you are proactively communicating with the stakeholders, understanding what makes them tick, what keeps them engaged, what keeps them coming back, what keeps them giving you feedback, what keeps that repetition, that flame of the project alive in the mind of the stakeholder. This is where you, with your expertise, make it happen. You're working with them, you're engaging them, you're inviting them to the right meetings, you're giving them the right level of attention. And then we get to monitor stakeholder engagement, where you are looking in the rearview mirror and saying, are we really doing a good job with our stakeholder engagement? What could we change? Does anything need to change? Is a stakeholder disengaged? What can we do to correct that? And that's monitor stakeholder engagement. Now, going back to our pentagon here, we've gone through integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, procurement, and stakeholder. And the only one left is an area that I call the 8 ball. This is where everything revolves around one concept. You don't want to fail. There's a possibility your project will fail. there's also a possibility it will succeed. You need to manage those variables. And that's why it's the bullseye in the middle that you want to hit. It's that eight ball. It's that variable that if this doesn't work out, everything goes down the tubes. It's the concept of risk. Risk touches everything. It touches how well you integrate. It touches scope. You have scope risk, schedule risk, cost risk, resource risk, stakeholder risk, procurement risk. You have risks from every surrounding area. And that's why risk needs to be looked at differently. My buddy, the risk doctor, would often say project management is really risk management. It's all about the risk. And it's true. Why do you develop a schedule? To ensure that the schedule risk doesn't happen. Why do you go into a WBS? To ensure that the scope risks don't happen. So when we think about risk, we have to see it from a different angle. And that's why I've given it the prime position of being in the middle. When I think about risk, I think about dice. That's the visual I have. It's a game of chance. When we talk about risk, a risk is a risk event that could affect the project positively or negatively. So a risk is an uncertain event. To take away the risk and not have to say it twice, a risk is an uncertain event that if it happens, it could impact the project positively or negatively. So we say managing uncertainty that could impact the project positively or negatively. Now, a picture is worth 1,000 words, as you will agree. So let me give you a visual that will help convey the importance of risk and how you should tackle it mentally. Think about this analogy. You are a homeowner. You have mice running around. That's a problem. What are you going to do about it? Well, you're going to set a trap. There's a positive outcome and a negative outcome from this picture. If the mouse gets the cheese, is that positive or is that negative? You could look at it as being positive for the mouse, but it's negative for you, the homeowner. What about if the trap catches the mouse? It's curtains for the mouse. That would be sad for it. That would be a threat. But for you, it's an opportunity to catch the mouse that has been making life miserable for you. So, what is the positive uncertainty? It depends on who's looking. What is a negative uncertainty? It depends on who's looking. And that's why we have positive risks or threats, negative risks, I beg your pardon, or threats, positive risks or opportunities, negative risks or threats, positive risks or opportunities. So the mouse is wearing a helmet, probably trying to reduce the impact of the trap if it did go off. But will the mouse get the cheese? It got the cheese. Positive for the mouse, negative for you. So when you take a look at a risk, see a risk as an uncertain event that could impact the project positively or negatively. As a good project manager, you should document the risks. You should understand if they are high probability, low probability. You actually could compute a risk score for every risk identified, and you can prioritize which risks to go after. Then you create a response strategy. For the negative risks, we have 5 strategies. We have mitigate, avoid, transfer, accept, or escalate. Mitigate is reducing the probability of the impact. Avoiding is eliminating the probability of occurrence. Transfer is transferring it to a third party, like insurance or performance bonds. Accepting is doing nothing. And escalating is escalating it to a higher power, a higher authority. For positive risks, we also have strategies. We can enhance, exploit, share, accept, or escalate. Enhance means increasing the probability of the risk or the impact of the risk. Exploit is doing everything possible to eliminate the uncertainty. In other words, you're making it 100% certain that this risk, positive risk, will happen. You're putting your best people on the project. You're putting your best resources forward. You're doing everything possible to harvest that positive outcome. It's very aggressive. Share is sharing the opportunity with a third party, a sister company, or other entity. Accepting a positive risk is doing nothing. If it happens, it happens, but we're not going after it actively. Escalate refers to a risk being elevated to a higher authority, either because it's outside of the realms of your project or it's outside the bounds of your authority. So we have a mnemonic for the negative risks or threats. It's A team. Remember Mr. T and the A team. So A for avoid, T for transfer, E for escalate, A for accept, M for mitigate, A team. This helps you recall the strategies for negative risks or threats. For positive risks or opportunities, we have a mnemonic easy, EASEE. It's a play on words, but for opportunities, it's easy. Get it? Escalate, accept, share, exploit, enhance. So there's a method to the apparent madness of risk management. And at the end of the day, we're going to have a risk response. We're going to have a strategy. Are we going to mitigate? Are we going to accept? What are we going to do about the risk? Many organizations don't think about cataloging opportunities, but I often encourage my clients to do that. Start training your project managers on realizing opportunities and actively pursuing opportunities because you just never know. There might be a diamond in the rough in that opportunity. It might look like very basic, but you got to think differently about opportunities and you got to be aggressive about opportunities. So, my friends, 7 things we do in risk. Let's catalog them one by one. Number 1, plan risk management. Number 2, identify risk. Plan risk management means the how. Identify risk means we're identifying what could go wrong. You're also having a mentality of 3 things. I call it the CRE model, cause, risk, effect. It's not enough to identify the risk. You got to identify the cause of that risk. What could cause that to happen? And then identify the risk. And then identify the effect, the impact. Why do I identify root causes of risks? Because if we can identify multiple risks and attach them to one root cause, we just go after the cause. You kill the cause, and the risks generally will go away. So you got to do a good job in identifying risks with a cause, risk, and effect model, and that's in identify risks. After you've identified risk, the next step is to perform a qualitative risk analysis, which I showed you, probability rating on a scale of 1 to 5, and impact rating on a scale of 1 to 5. You multiply probability and impact. What happens? You get a risk score. Based on the risk score, you could determine which risks you could accept and which ones you're going to actively pursue, which ones you're going to do something about. So, when we talk about a risk being a risk score of a 20, in this register, for example, that's the highest. You got to do something about that. A 16, you got to do something about that. An 8, probably. A 3, you could accept it. But then there's a risk urgency assessment, and there are other parameters, the proximity of the risk. You got to think about the propinquity of the risk. And there are many other elements of risks that you need to think about, but start off by scoring the risk, and then you could get into a quantitative risk analysis. And a quantitative risk analysis is where you're doing expected monetary value analysis. You're looking at the risk magnitude by multiplying absolute percent times the impact in dollars. It could be based on expert judgment. There are many parameters in the world of risk, but you got to take a stand against risk somehow. Some companies, they do quantitative risk analysis, but not everyone does. It's really up to you and your organization. But a quantitative risk analysis is numerically analyzing the combined effect of identified individual project risks and other sources of uncertainty on the project. Number 5, we plan risk responses. As I showed you, avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate. A team, or for the positive risks, easy. A lot of organizations don't think about the positive. Number 6, implement risk responses. It's the process of implementing the agreed upon risk response plans. And number seven, you monitor risk. We don't use the word control, that would be a bit presumptuous. We cannot bend reality, but we can keep an eye on what is happening and we can steer the project in the right direction. So when we talk about monitor risk, we're identifying, analyzing, and planning for new risks, tracking identified risks, reanalyzing existing risks, asking, has anything changed, monitoring risk conditions, and variance and trend analysis, trying to understand the ebb and flow of the project. At the end of the day, you're going to have a risk register. It could look more complicated than this. It could have more fields. You could track the risk owner and the risk action owner. But the summary is whatever you're working on, make sure that the level of risk management is equal to the level of visibility and importance of the project. And there you have it, my friends, a holistic view of project management. But wait, there is actually a little bit more. Now you've got a very good idea of project management. You know the knowledge areas, you know the process groups, but there's one more variable. And that variable is understanding that everything here rests on solid principle. That's right. It's not enough to have our knowledge areas and our process groups. It must rest on solid ideologies and philosophies. And this is where I introduce you to the 12 principles of project management from the PMI in PMBOK Guide 7th edition. When you add that to the mix, you have a layer of support that gives the project manager the right mindset. And this is the base that will make project management complete. I am going to walk you through the 12 principles: stewardship, collaboration, engagement, value, systems, leadership, tailoring, quality, navigating, risk, resiliency, and change. Let's take a look at these one by one. Number one, stewardship. Be a diligent, respectful, and caring steward with the resources that have been entrusted to you. Number two, collaboration. Create a collaborative project team environment. Number three, effectively engage with stakeholders. That's the stakeholder principle. Number four, focus on value. Number five, be a systems thinker. Recognize, evaluate, and respond to systems interaction. Number six, leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership is all about influence. Demonstrate leadership behaviors. Great communication, a great listener, a servant leader, a situational leader, being there for your people, casting vision, interpreting what someone said because your team members didn't get it, being there for the team, uplifting the team, motivating the team, coaching the team, encouraging the team. Those are the leadership behaviors. Number seven, tailor. Tailor based on context. You got to tailor the processes to the project. Don't go to a pea shooter fight with a machine gun. Don't use the 49 processes on every single project the same way. No, you got to tailor. Number eight, quality. Build quality into processes and deliverables. Number nine, navigate complexity. How do you do that? You break things down into smaller pieces. You make them iterative. You make them incremental. You repeat until correct. You deliver in increments. We call that being agile. Number 10, risk. Optimize risk responses. Number 11, adaptability. Embrace adaptability and resiliency. You got to be able to bounce back. I call it bounce back ability. That's resiliency. To keep coming back, to stay relevant. Great examples around us. Facebook, you would have thought they'd go away. They're still there. Amazon, still there, stronger than ever. And we need to be resilient in our organizations by being able to bounce back, responding to the ever changing world around you. That's what adaptability is about. Number 12, change. Enable change to achieve the envisioned future state. Let change happen, but do it in an intentional, methodical, and empathetic way. Usually, when we hear about change, we think about what people need to do. But instead, we should be thinking about people's perspective and how they feel. And instead of trying to get them on board with it, we should understand their concerns. And that's what change management should rest on: empathy, understanding, compassion. Those, my friends, are the 12 principles of project management. And that brings our Learning 360. The last thing I want to dwell on for a second is how everything works together in this framework. We have projects, but we also have programs, a collection of two or more projects that are interrelated. We also have the idea about portfolios, a collection of projects and programs and operational work that are managed together to achieve strategic objectives. So when you think about it, portfolios are all about doing the right work, projects doing the work right. So portfolios are important. We don't want to work on white elephant projects, projects that have absolutely no use. We don't want to carry coal to Newcastle. We want to ensure that what we're working on is indeed relevant. And that's the job of the portfolio manager, to choose the right projects. So when you look at the grand scheme of it all, my friends, we as an organization should be effectively managing projects, programs, and portfolios. Operational work is included in the portfolio. Some operational work is included in programs, and they all need to be harmonized. There needs to be a system for value delivery. I liken it to an aquarium. In the aquarium, you got boulders, humongous pieces. In the aquarium, you also have rocks. The big rocks, they represent the interrelated projects. You also have standalone projects, little pebbles. But most importantly is the lifeblood of the organization: operations. Operations working together with programs, projects, and portfolios enable the sustenance of the firm. The fish, those are like the stakeholders and the entities that are being supported within this firm. Beyond that, we have outcomes. The outcomes, we have the plants, we have the environment, we have the great scenery that the fish are enjoying, benefits, and ultimately the idea of value. If you have any questions about this presentation, my friends, feel free to put them in the chat. Visit the website, praizion.com. Email is info@praizion.com if you have any questions. This is from a much wider course that spans across several days, and it's called Smart Project Management. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it informative. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, because there'll be more videos to help you in your understanding of project management for the real world. If you're getting ready for the PMP exam, also visit praizion.com. Take a look at our options. Also go to tinyurl.com/elite PMP if you want to go for PMP training on my Udemy course. Thank you very much, my friends. I wish you all the best in your project management journey. Remember, project management, knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques applied to the project to achieve that overarching outcome. The deliverables are important, but the outcome, without it, your project has not succeeded. Okay? You might have questions about other aspects of project management or agile. Be sure to check out the channel, because I'm sure a lot of these questions can be answered through some of our videos. And every now and again, you'll see me come on live. So do like and subscribe so that you'll be notified when the next video is published or when I go live next. Thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye for now.